Hello, hello. Welcome back to What They Don't Say. Guys, it has been a minute. It has been a fat freaking minute since we put an episode out. We have been sitting down with so many amazing people in the past couple of months and just been having so many amazing conversations. So, we are just working really hard to get those episodes ready and prepared and just, ready to get out there for all you guys. So, stay tuned. We're really excited. But for today, we want to introduce you guys to Sheerin Gryloo, who is the founder of the Women's Advocacy Initiative. Guys, advocacy is such a hard word to say. Women's Advocacy Initiative. There we go. Which is all about supporting survivors in a myriad of different ways. We will dive a lot more into that foundation. But for now, this is part one of a two-part series. We have so many wonderful, random, fun, not so fun, more serious topics that we cover in this episode and in the next episode, and just stay tuned for that. We talk about everything from nose jobs to addiction to makeup to the Title IX process to self-advocacy. There's so much jam-packed in here that we are so excited for you guys to get to take part in. So with that, let's dive right in.
Hello, hello.
Hello. Wait, so where are you guys right now then?
We are in Bay Area in California. So we're 30
Okay.
minutes south of San Francisco right now. So
Who here is using Google Maps instead of Apple Maps?
I have started using Google Maps and it is significantly better than Apple Maps by
I will
1,000.
never.
Have you tried it?
Apple Maps. Yeah, Apple Maps has led me to alleyways and sometimes a lake instead of a destination.
Mhm.
But Google Maps is kind of ugly. The UI really bothers me. You look at it,
It
it's just like,
is.
I can't cope with this. It's so it looks like Roblox or something.
Google's gonna get their shit together and be better in the future, hopefully.
Yeah, knock on wood. Do you remember when everyone was using Waze for a while?
Oh, still use Waze.
I would say Waze is such an excellent example of this is something I talk about very, very often too, is community. The only time we come together as a community to be cop ahead, pig
Yep.
ahead, stop this, putting it together, putting all that info together. Oh, look, there's, traffic ahead. That is so Eastern mentality, collectivist mentality, bringing that into one app. I feel like we don't talk about that enough because that's
No,
really
it's
something.
true.
One time I was driving on a highway in Colorado and it said doesn't it say creature in the road or animal in the road?
It says
I've
roadkill.
never seen that one.
I think there's one that will say oh, there's beware, there's a creature in the road. And there was literally a fucking human being walking on the highway. And someone had put in animal in the road. And I was
This
oh my
fugly
God.
motherfucker is in the road. Let's just say creature. That is so messed up.
Yeah. Oh my
You know how
God.
you used to be able to message people on Waze? That was a feature. I want to say
You
that
could
was
make
12.
friends.
Some guy messaged me and was like, "Hey, saw you driving next to me. You look so cute. Just wanted to let you know."
Okay, I will.
So that's kind of iconic, but also weird.
Yeah.
It's weird, but
this was 12 years ago. This was insane.
that's when dating apps were first becoming super popular. But I will say, my friend has been dating someone for 3.5 years. I think they're gonna get married, and they met on the freeway. His friend was in the passenger seat and put his phone number up to the window and was like, "Hey, you're cute. Please text me." And she was dating someone at the time. And so she texted him and was just like, "Hey, sorry, I have a boyfriend." But eventually her and that boyfriend broke up. And literally 2 weeks, just by fate, that man that she had met on the freeway texted her and was like, "Hey, just checking in about your boyfriend." And she's like, "I don't have one anymore." And now they've been dating for 3.5 years.
What?
That's actually
Wait, who
really
is this?
cute. That's one of those things that's I think it's cute. It's cute because it worked out, but it's
If
It's
it had
also
worked
on the
creepy.
other side, it could be a little creepy. I love a good meet cute. I think that's very precious. I've met people on planes and stuff, and it's worked out kind of well.
How
Oh my
did you
God.
meet your husband? I've noticed I'm sorry, you have this glorious rock on your finger.
Oh,
And
thank you.
I'm just kind of curious from a relationship standpoint.
So it's my fiance.
Fiance. Oh, sorry.
It's actually oh no, you're all good. So it's actually a little unusual. Well, third time's a charm, my third fiance. But we were friends, and then we never actually dated, but we weren't ever really platonic. So for like 5 years, we were very close friends, and then I was just like, "Do you want to get married?" And I brought this like janky little ring that I had like from 12 years ago. That was like, you know, the kind that turns your finger green because it's so cheap and crap.
Yes.
I brought it over. I was like, "Do you want to get married?" And I like tried to stick it on his pinky. He said yes, and then we just went from there. I don't know. It felt like dating
Okay.
felt a little like asinine, given that we had known each other so long. We knew everything there was to know. I mean, we traveled together, so we'd stay together for like, months at a time. Like everything that was needed to
Yeah.
know was known, and we'd see each other through so much. That it
Yeah.
just felt like, kind of unnecessary to have that part of it.
Yeah. But I also feel like everyone tells you, oh, like marry your best friend. You know what I mean? And like I feel like that's
Ooh,
like the like
I am not like that.
oh
I
okay, well
don't buy that. I don't buy that. I mean, do you guys,
well
is that what you guys feel
no,
like?
no, I don't think like your literal best friend. Like I'm not gonna go like marry my best
I
friend
would love
Ella,
to marry
but
my
like
literal best friend.
but like I just
My,
mean like having that friendship as your foundation can build such a strong relationship, I feel like. You know what I mean?
oh,
Because
sure.
like you were able to like get to know each other in a way that like frankly like I don't know if you really can when you like go straight into like dating someone, you
Mm.
know? Like I think that it's kind of cool that it like you have that like 5 year long like friendship as your foundation. Like
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I think I view like dating and relationships like a little bit differently. I just like what I would want from a significant other, from a partner, is just kind of, I don't really need like love. I think
Oh,
that
this
came
is
that
so
came out wrong.
interesting.
I
interesting.
mean, okay, so I mean, I think about like when I was younger. So I accidentally ended up being like a serial monogamist, and it wasn't on purpose. It just kept happening. Like one relationship would end, and I would meet someone, and that would be really serious, and to get engaged, and like all this thing. And I realized, I was very much trying to fill something. And you know how they say, like, somebody shouldn't be your other half. You should be whole yourself, and the other person should
Right.
be like an excellent addition to it. I think that might have been me for a long time. And then the nonprofit, I will say, like, that was when, when we started really putting in work on it. I realized that was absolutely everything to me. And I needed really nothing else. And everything was just kind of this like addition.
Hmm.
And to me, my friends are just the most important people in my life. They are just like the most crucial things. I mean, like when my best friend and I had this like falling out, I was like catatonic for like 3 weeks.
Mhm.
I mean, I was sexually assaulted. I didn't really care that much, but I was catatonic when I lost my best friend. Like we
Yeah.
talk about priorities, but yeah, I don't know. I just see relationships as like, I mean, I need respect, I need support, and I need, the ability to support like what I want to do, and, understanding of what I want to do with my life. But, love is something that I feel like I get from my friends. And that thing that I would say like makes me whole is this work, is like the commitment to it. Which is so funny because I was so ready to just be like, that like trophy wife bullshit. Like I was doing
Right.
that shit. I was in Miami. I was just like walking around doing nothing. I was just going to the spa. I was shopping. I was like, this is kind of nice. And I was like, this can be the rest of my life. That's great. But no, of course something happens. I'm like, no, let
Right.
me actually put in work. And I'm just, that could have been me. And then I had an
Well,
idea or something.
well, first of all, you're like iconic, like on every level. Like you
Oh,
just
thank
everything
you.
that comes out of your mouth, like you're an icon. Do you feel like your partner or your fiance is like a life partner, or do you feel like what would you define it as?
I define it as a roommate that you're incredibly close to, someone you feel like, I think there needs to be a sense of extreme security, but also it cannot be unconditional. There needs to be some kind of boundary. And I'm thinking back to like my own past and, the things that I have done. So, I had a problem with addiction like years and years ago. And I would really prefer to be with somebody who's like, I draw a line at this. Like, you need to get your shit together. Like, I will do everything to help you, but I will not enable this. Like, I will not continue to be here for you and love you and allow this to happen. And I think that when you have like, there are people who fall into like either camp, who will be like, who want to be with you throughout everything no matter what. And in that sense, almost like enable you. It's that unconditional love that I think, that should be, to me, that's reserved for like my friends. I suppose family, I'm not as close with my family, but it's still there. But with relationships, I don't know. I find it to be like, there's the element of support. There's somebody that you should be able to tell absolutely everything to, but they should challenge you, right?
Right.
I think there should always be this element of like, we want to make each other like the best versions of ourselves. I definitely had relationships where I was like, okay, most of them were long distance. I'd be traveling very often. And I'd be like, okay, I feel really skinny for when you come back. So I like wouldn't eat for like 2 weeks, which was like, that's psychotic. Like, I am not recommending this. It should never be like that, right? Like,
Right.
there this on and then off kind of thing. Like, I have to be perfect in front of them, and then I go back home and like do a bunch of morphine. Like, that was what I was used to for a long time. So I think like being with somebody who knew me, who knew that kind of ugliness that comes with it, with all of, who I am, with all of, we all have like something that's, unattractive in a sense that we wouldn't want to reveal. I mean, I do remember my first relationship, I'd wake up and I'd like put on, it's so embarrassing, it's so marvelous, Miss Maisel. I would put on
Oh my gosh, I was
makeup
about to
before he
say
woke
that.
up. Yeah. I mean, have you guys done that? Is it just me? It can't be, right?
I think that like so many girls do that. I feel
That
like
was
if I
bad.
wore makeup, I would have done that. Like I had that like same mentality of like, oh my God, like
Okay, Miss Flex,
no,
if
that's
I
not
Is
what
walk
she
I
into
like, okay,
no,
no,
like
Lauren
no, no,
just
no. I
doesn't.
literally just do not know how. Like I want to be able to, but like me trying to put on makeup, it's like Shannon can tell you it's the funniest thing trying to watch me like do anything to my face or my hair. Like I am incapable. I'm like so
It's true.
incompetent.
She's like
It is
almost like
so
not
funny.
like she's like a woman. Like Lauren is a woman, but she'll do things like hold up a curling iron and just not even know where to begin. And I'm like, well, first you got to plug it in. And she's like, what do you mean I have to plug it in? Or paints her nails chip immediately. And
That's so
I'm like,
relatable.
well, did you use a top coat? She's like, what's a top coat? Like this is serious. These are real
No, this,
examples here.
I'm sorry, this feels like you're coming for me too, like straight from my neck. So like, I was one time, my ex Annie and I, we were like, let's do Euphoria makeup. And so
Mhm.
we had this like glitter eyeshadow palette that I got my Ipsy, and we were just putting it on. I was like, why
Ipsy.
does mine look like, I love Ipsy. Ipsy, I really will say, like, is really great for like suicidal people because it's like you're gonna kill
You
yourself, but
have
then it's
to.
like, okay, but my Ipsy's coming next week. Let me hold on.
I gotta wait for my subscription makeup bag. Yeah.
It's like something to look forward to, which I feel like they should really market it that way.
Oh my gosh,
Moving
life hack.
on.
If you're suicidal, get an Ipsy
Get an Ipsy.
subscription. It'll
Get
be
an
worth
Ipsy
the
subscription.
$13 a month to keep living until you
You
figure it
know,
out and you're okay without it.
but
Yeah.
they really did come up with this like clever scheme where they let you know what's in your bag 2 weeks prior to getting the bag. So I'm like, okay,
Mhm.
nice. This is a bi-monthly thing. Like why kill yourself? There's so much to look forward to every 2 weeks.
See, Lauren has no idea what we're talking about.
No, I'm
Oh
so
my God.
lost.
Lord, I'm so sorry. I want to learn how to contour.
Me too.
I had rhinoplasty, I had it niched up, and I will say like it's
Mhm.
not worth it. Don't get it if you haven't. Like don't get it because it's the same as just learning how to contour your nose. I was too lazy to learn how to contour, and so that's why I did that. Like there was just no point. Just
Well, we
learn how to
both want
contour.
nose jobs, so I guess now we just have to learn how to
Just learn how to
contour.
contour. Learn how to contour. I swear it's not worth it.
Yeah, this is also a fun. What are we doing here? We are talking about sexual assault. We're preventing suicide. We are, saving money. We're a full service podcast over here.
Oh, absolutely. We're being fiscally
Holistic.
responsible. This is not even girl math. This is just, fiscal responsibility.
Yeah,
We've
let's
touched
just
on
dive
so
in.
many
Yeah,
topics
there's
already.
I
She
know.
like slipped. She's like
Yeah.
BT dubs, morphine, slay, BT dubs. Like you really.
Morphine slay. Morphine is not a slay, by the way. I guess that's like, this is so dare of me. Like, no, let's not do morphine, please. I will say, like, I
Don't
have
do
like
drugs.
diarrhea of the mouth. I have a problem. Like, I cannot stop talking. It's an illness.
I guess this like isn't really starting at the beginning, but I do think it is important for like our audiences to kind of just gain an understanding of like what your experience was with sexual assault and like you had some experiences with like Title IX and like all that bullshit
Mhm.
and kind of just like going back to the beginning of that and kind of just giving people a background of like the story that happened to you.
So I'm happy to start at, what really isn't the beginning, but it's what I call the beginning, I suppose, because this, it's really what inspired, me to start the Women's Advocacy Initiative. And it's something that's so irrevocably tied with me, with who I am. It was founded off my story, and it is, my past, my present, my future. In my final year of undergrad, I went through a Title IX case. It was not the first time that I had been raped, but it was the first time that I had reported it. 1 year after it happened, in fact. And the reason I had waited so long was because I had, as so many women do, chalked it up to a bad experience. Until I found out, 1 year later, speaking with a friend, that she too had had a bad experience with the exact same person. In speaking with about one more person, I got 4 more names of
Wow.
people who had, bad experiences, which is, it's such a heinous euphemism, right? Because it's something that we say when there's this weird gray area, we write it off because sometimes I think we view sexual violence, sexual assault as this one violent act, as opposed to a series of events that culminate into violence. And with me, that was repeatedly kind of saying no, like he'd put his hands on me. I'd say, oh no, like laughing, brushing it off.
Right.
Again, 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 until I finally thought, the way so many women do, I have a choice right now. It's to just kind of give in. It's to say yes. And that's the easier option, right? Because what happens if I say no? What is
Right.
the risk? Every woman's worst fear, right? You have aggravated rape and then potential violence leading to murder, anything that could happen. So I, did what I thought was going along with it, which I did not realize at the time was implicit coercion. It was still rape. It was not a bad experience. So, that term that we use, that I say this quite often, actually. I know few women who have been raped, but every single woman I know has had a bad experience.
Right.
So I came forward, and I came forward as, again, what we'd call kind of the worst possible victim, right? A documented history of mental illness, serious drug abuse. 1 year later, contact with the assailant afterwards, prior consent with the assailant before. And, this is something that we really like to draw light to, that I like to draw light to, is, why we do these things, the things that are meant to shame us and prevent us from sharing our stories, why talk to your assailant afterwards? And these were things that I was questioned about repeatedly during the hearing, during my interviews, again and again. And to me, the answers were very simple. I didn't feel shame. And to me, shame and self-advocacy cannot coexist. And, I had always been, like, when I was a child, like a loudmouth. Like, I always fought for what I wanted. And, I think self-advocacy is something that, it bleeds into every part of our lives. It is so, so crucial. And I'm sorry, I hope I'm not going off on a tangent here, but
You're
like, this is
fine.
just this is really like the core, I feel like, of my story, of every story we want to tell here. But, I had always been that way. I had always been, loud about what I wanted. I had always been very insistent on what I wanted, on what I thought I deserved. And, we have, when it comes to the baseline of self-advocacy, we've thought about this over and over again. Like, you can tell people, like, oh, you should fight for what you want. You should fight for what you think you deserve, for the respect that you think you deserve. But how do you do that? Like, what is it? And, we see it as kind of like a funnel, right? Like, so you have like the top level of, like, I want to say confidence, the ability to speak up for yourself. And then you have to have a lower level of not caring about what people might think of you. Because especially as women, the way we are taught to not rock the boat, the way we are taught to stay silent, especially when it comes to authority figures.
Right.
And then there is, really the plinth of it all, the baseline of it all, which is understanding that you deserve a level of respect, compassion, and dignity. And also understanding that people will not give you that. They will not treat you with the respect, compassion, and dignity that you deserve. But that is something that you should demand. And that is something that I continuously demanded in my case. I think they practically reserved a couch for me in the Title IX office. I was in there every single day, during classes, after classes, waiting for the Title IX coordinator, asking, where are we with this? Why was the hearing pushed? Why was this interview pushed? Why is there, false testimony being allowed as evidence? And I was playing Nancy Drew. And, it really harkens back to, the first, not even interview, but meeting when you're coming in, you're deciding, yes, I would like to pursue this Title IX complaint, where they say, just leave it to us. All you need to do is tell the truth, provide whatever evidence you have, and then it's just the rest is our job. And I absolutely knew in that moment that that wasn't the case, because this was my entire life. This was potentially the most important thing in my entire life. And absolutely no way was I leaving it in the hands of anyone else. And it only occurred to me, in the years after, that is not naturally how everyone thinks, whether it's, just not how you naturally, behave, or whether you're unable to advocate for yourself. And, there's certainly a level of privilege that needs to be acknowledged. Like, I was able to do, get away with certain things, with, calling everybody inept, idiots, incompetent in the Title IX office over and over again. Which I take back. They're fantastic now. We've been working with the William and Mary team and the Title IX office lately to implement some, sexual assault prevention tactics. And we've been working with, what they've been doing now. But at the time, that is something that was absolutely major. And I caught mistakes, and I caught, like I said, a false testimony. And, it was not my job to be playing Scooby-Doo. And I was so completely alone. I was like some kind of exile of time. I was just sitting there while everyone moved forward. I was stuck in this case itself, obsessing repeatedly over it, micromanaging to its end. And I would do it 1,000 times over, the pain it caused me, but I would do it again and again and again. If I could do it for anybody else, I absolutely would, because the outcome was absolutely worth it. And I think often about how I was told by, not only my advisor, but, also a couple members of the dean's office, the reason that we got the outcome we did, which I was told was the sanctions were the harshest that were given out in over a decade, which is infuriating, right? Because there is no way my case was the worst, in a decade, especially given, the lack of any physical evidence. It was very much what I said versus what he said. And I was told so much of it was because of how I advocated for myself, how much I pushed, and how I was able to speak without shame. And that is truly just the core of everything. That was the most fundamental part of, how I began to think about this in the next few years. Shame and self-advocacy and the way we blame ourselves, the way we are taught to blame ourselves, and how to reframe all that. Because when we talk about sexual violence, I think, and this is a core thing with the Women's Advocacy Initiative, with what we're trying to, really restructure how people think about this, we see it in this odd nebulous space that exists between sex and violence, right? We want to firmly place that under the category of violence, because that is what it is. There is no in between there. There is no relation to sex. Even the words like, non-consensual, sex, like that itself, I understand it's a definition of rape, but sex is not rape.
Right.
And making that distinction exactly is to, I think it would work to eliminate that sense of self-blame, of victim blaming, of shame. And these are the factors that prevent women from coming forward. And we talk about resources, absolutely, financial resources, but it's also internal, right? I mean, no one comes forward just because they're like, oh, I have a ton of evidence on me. Think about how many rape kits are just sitting there. No, it's not that. It's, what prevents us from coming forward? It's resources. It's time, it's money, and then it's also what is happening internally. It's the shame that we feel. It is the shame that we fear will be used against us. And the only way to battle that is to fundamentally understand that, there is nothing wrong with what we have done. We love putting survivors, we love treating them as if they are a monolith, right? They have to be frail, they have to be broken. God forbid you go to a bar the day after that will be used against you so horrendously, which is insane, right?
Like, how dare you live your life ever again? Yeah. And it's
Mhm.
interesting though, because I don't think that we've talked to anybody who has said that they didn't feel shame afterwards. Like,
Mhm.
I think you're probably the first survivor that we've talked to who's like, I didn't feel shame. And I don't know what led you to that point, but it's really interesting because how are we supposed to not feel shame? Like, we're fed all of these narratives, everything that we're told, all of these
Mhm.
things, cover your drink, wear the right clothes, don't stay out too late, don't walk alone. How are we supposed to demand respect when the narrative that we're taught is that we are, to be used by other people and we're here just for men? And all of that weight, if something does happen, is on us. So, how do we even begin to demand respect? But, anyways, I just think it's incredible that you were able to sort of reframe everything.
There are things that we've been trying to answer, things that I've been trying to answer. And, the reason I can say, I can speak to myself, I can say I did not feel shame because I was a victim of a violent crime. That was it. That's really where it starts and ends. And that is really how we should think about it. It's never
Yeah.
that simple, but that is what it is. And the victim of a stabbing or a shooting, or I hate to think of like being creative with random violent crimes, but they are not subject to that same level of of victim blaming, of shame. And so much of the shame ties in with women's sexuality. Again, it's that comparing rape to sex, even though it is a violent crime. It is the same as using fists, same as using a knife. It is simply a different weapon in use. Why do we see rape happen, in prisons, in as a tool of war, whenever there is an
Yeah.
oppressor attempting to, gain power, dominance over the oppressed? This is simply a tool that they will always use, the ultimate tool of degradation, of humiliation. When we talk about and this is something that we try to tackle, but it's so immensely different. When we talk about sexual violence in the West versus anywhere else, and you think about ritualized sexual violence, you think about, the UAE, where, honor killing is very okay. Where, I mean, even in the US, I think, what was it, up until 2001 in a couple of states, it was still legal. Marital rape was still legal. That's still legal in UAE.
Mm.
And all of that falls apart because, you will think about how those questions of what were you drinking? What were you wearing? Why were you out at night at this time? These things that don't exist, 20 miles outside of Tehran, where
Mhm.
you are completely covered, where you are following exactly whatever rules you are supposed to be following. You are not, where it's a dry country, you are not drinking. I mean, I will say my family in Iran still has alcohol. I don't know how they get it, but whatever. But
They're smuggling
these,
it.
it was like, do you get it? Like the same as like meeting a dealer, like for pills or something? Do you
Oh
just
my
like
God.
switch over like a bottle of Grey Goose or something?
They're like
No, it's so
connected.
wild. Oh yeah, no, my family over there is like ridiculous. That being said, I think, every question we have here to that exists solely to blame victims, it falls apart when we compare that, that cross-cultural, impact of sexual violence, when we look at how it is outside of Western countries.
Mhm.
None of this matters ultimately. These are just their tactics. It's tactics in the same way that, if you have a lawyer and you are charged with a crime, you want your lawyer to do absolutely everything they can, right,
Hmm.
to defend you. And it's simply that. And I think the only way to get through that is to understand you were the victim of a violent crime. And when we tie that with emotionality, is so sick to me. You have to display that this was, some horrendous act that ruined your life, right? You cannot seem as though you're moving forward normally. You cannot seem as though, again, like I said, like going to a bar the next day,
Yeah.
God
Like,
forbid.
you're never supposed to be able to recover from this ever.
Mhm. Exactly. You have to show a frailty. You have to show, that you were destroyed,
Yeah.
which is ridiculous. I mean, it was a crime occurred. There is a criminal, and they are meant to be punished in whatever way is, deemed appropriate in that sense. And I do think the way that we currently approach sexual violence, and I am talking about, the nonprofits in this space, I will talk shit. I do not care. If I agreed with how we were running things currently, I would have just joined another nonprofit and done this work. But I find myself incredibly disappointed by,
Yeah.
what other organizations are doing, what the current discussions, are around let's say consent is, kind of an example. I always go back to this concept of like, no means no. If you're not comfortable, it's fine to say no. This is consent 101. This is what we talk about with like 5-year-olds. What about implicit coercion? What about when you can't say no? And who is seeing these? Who is seeing, your Instagram posts? Who is seeing, your presentations, your deck saying no means no, or, if you say no, it means you can stop. That's fine. It's not just, maybe like potential rapists, fine, maybe they'll get a clue. But it's also those survivors, those victims who were not able to say no and who are now having their stories, their experiences invalidated and discounted because they
Yeah.
could not or were not able to say no.
That's the thing though, is that when you press charges or report or whatever, like they always need to prove that you vocalized no. Like you said those words out loud a million fucking times. And if you didn't, then like somehow it was consensual. Somehow it was not rape. And in so many cases, like you said, like you literally can't. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
whether it's because it is like so violent or like whatever it is, like you literally cannot say no. And then like somehow your case falls through the cracks because of that. Doesn't make any fucking sense. And I think that is, an education thing. And like, I think that we obviously do a terrible job with teaching any age this type of stuff, right? Like it is important to teach 5-year-olds about like what consent is, like bare bones. And I don't think we even do that, right? Like we don't even teach little kids like, oh, ask for consent before you hug someone. You know what I mean? Like we don't even do that enough. And so like if we don't even do that enough, then we're obviously not having a like holistic approach to the educational aspects of any of this.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I think we talk about when we say no, we act as if it is some kind of, heroic thing, a brave statement, when it can actually be a terrible risk that we take. How do you say no when someone has shown to you that they are capable of violence? When someone has
Yeah.
shown to you that they will not take no for an answer, that not saying no, that perhaps like doing what is wanted from the perpetrator will just make it easier.
Mm-hmm.
And
You'll
we've built
protect
up
yourself.
so many false narratives around that. To the fact that the word no is not like a trigger for me. I get so angry and I start like, talking about it. So for so much, I mean, I will not shut up about it because again, we talk about power dynamics and, entitlement is something that I think is huge. I recently had a discussion with, I won't name them. They're very irritating. And he was saying something about, and he's in this space, he is working to reform like the Title IX process and, sexual assault prevention. He said something about how not, we were arguing a bit. He was saying not all assailants are the way that you paint them to be. They are, a lot of them are just like kind of confused and they don't realize, what they're doing and they need that education. I firmly disagree with that. I
It's
believe,
wrong.
you can't not know. And it's just in that moment, it's hedonism and it's entitlement that will absolutely take forth. I mean, you think about like, let's see, what are connections with domestic violence, with sexual violence, with massive acts of violence? We talk about school shooters, mass shooters, where 90 plus, I think it's 90 to 98%. I want to say, don't say me on this if I'm wrong. At least 90%, have some documented history of domestic violence or a severe hatred of women that has been documented. And
Mhm.
you see these acts of like, it's impotent rage, right? To take it out on a helpless population, to shoot up a school, to shoot up a mall. And there's this quote that I keep coming back to. I'm going to butcher it terribly, but some philosopher who said, and it was in regards to the Columbine shooting, I believe. It said, a man who kills a man kills a man. A man who kills himself wipes out all of humanity. Existence is no longer a thing. In the sense that, it's infantile, right? It's infantile, and there's this entitlement. It is this thought of, extreme ownership that men have. Ownership over not just, life itself, but women and women's bodies and what they think they are owed. and
Mhm.
what we are meant to provide. And there are so many things, my God, I think we are just constantly taking one step forward, 19 steps back. You talk about like sex work in general. And, I feel like a lot of people disagree with me on this, but, what are you doing when you are doing sex work? And I'm, of course, not speaking of people who are in a situation where they have no other choice.
Mm-hmm.
You are teaching men that you're not just doing this for yourself. You are speaking for all women. You are teaching men that your body is something to be bought and sold. That with money, anything can be done to you. And that women are just a commodity.
So is this
And
kind of like we're talking about like OnlyFans and things like that? Like, do you think that it could ever be empowering? Because I do believe that a lot of people are doing OnlyFans. I think it's probably, I don't know this for sure, but it's like 50%
so
people who really need it and then end up
mhm,
making an obscene amount of money, or people who are like famous and are just, selling their pictures or whatever. And then there's other
mhm.
people who are like, it's very empowering. Like I quit my 9 to 5 because I can put my titties on the internet.
Yeah, okay, put your titties on the internet, sell your fucking feet on the internet, like that's your thing. But it's the thing is everything we do as women, and this is unfortunate, right? It is never just for us. It is a depiction of all women. What we do, it reflects on everybody else. And for one person to feel empowered because the thing is, to me, it's a false empowerment. You're empowered. Why? Because you got to quit your fucking office job. You don't have to you don't have to pretend to know Excel anymore. Like that's fine. You don't have to do a pivot table anymore. Like cheers. I think a lot of people want that. I totally get that. But you are being used solely for your body. You are not being viewed as a human being. Um, and that it's what is taken away from that is that this is all women. That is that damaging after effect that women are in existence only to be bought and sold. They are a commodity. Their bodies are a commodity. And what might empower you? This is a very, very Western narrative, I will say. And this is something I talk about a lot, which is, Western versus Eastern narratives, individualism versus, a community-based society. OnlyFans in itself is the absolute pinnacle of individualism. It's saying, I feel empowered, but fuck the actual long-term effects. Fuck what it actually means.
Hmm.
Fuck the fact that like I am telling all men that women exist for their titties to be bought and
Please.
sold. That's it. Of course, I support, decriminalization, but to allow yourself to be bought and sold, it goes beyond yourself. And it is a
Hmm.
very, very individualist act. And I think it plays into, when I talk about individualism very, very often, this culture of silence. We say that often, right? When it comes to, rape culture, when it comes to sexual violence, we perpetuate that, don't we? We perpetuate that by saying to each other, this is your story. You owe it to absolutely no one. Like your trauma is your own, which is that not continuing what we talk about
Hmm.
a culture of silence? And it's perpetuating this narrative that survivors, victims of sexual violence, are frail. They exist, only within their trauma and nothing outside of it. And every single survivor I will say I've spoken to, of course I can't speak for everyone,
Right.
they want to do something. They would want to do something. And you know what? This is how I think about it, is when you are a survivor, you have the power. It is you who has the power. It is no longer your assailant. You can
Mhm.
do anything. You can file a police report. You can go forward with a civil suit. You can file a Title IX report if you are in school. All you need are the resources, the backing, and the support. And that's what we really aim to give survivors at the Women's Advocacy Initiative, is that financial resources, and also that fundamental kind of reframing of what happened to you, of who you are, what it means to be a victim of sexual violence, what it means to be a survivor of sexual violence. And when you look at DOJ statistics, and this was a really big thing for one of our initiatives, actually, like building up databases and getting proper statistics, proper research on sexual violence. So DOJ statistics, they will separate, and this is what RAIN uses as well, sexual, sex-based crime, violent crime versus other kinds of violent crime. And what falls into the other categories of violent crime, you have whatever, stabbings, aggravated assault, and then you also have domestic violence. So every statistic we have about, sexual assault, it comes from these stats. But how can domestic violence not be, this is gender-based crime. How could it not be a sexual crime, a sex-based crime? It is, I mean, outside of the fact that, like, the Venn diagram of people who are victims of domestic violence and sexual violence, that's straight up a circle usually. You cannot consent in an abusive relationship. It doesn't matter if, you feel like you are not being sexually assaulted. You cannot consent in that situation. So we now have incredibly skewed statistics, and everything we look at is deeply, deeply incorrect. I mean, even the number of, false reports. It's so funny because we talk about, like, before I started this organization, I was just like telling people about it, like, oh, what do you want to do? What are you doing with your life? Whatever. And I'd say, oh, I really want to start this nonprofit, to support survivors in reporting their assailants, financially, emotionally, all of that. And they'd always be like, oh, yeah? Well, what about them females that are always making false allegations? Like,
right.
First off, like, shut the fuck up.
Literally,
and second, like, shut up. That's not an argument. Like, okay, so what are the stats we have? It's 2 to 8%. What falls under the category of a false accusation is also when the police just determine that there is not enough evidence to pursue a case. Yeah, so you will throw that in the same category. So, okay, let's say 2% then is probably close to that. Let's have that is probably, even closer to what we have as accuracy. If we are not counting domestic violence as sexual violence, then continue to have that number because it is non-existent. Ugh, it is so beyond me. And I will say, like, this is also just one of those things that are like, maybe keep a thought to yourself, but I don't know how to do that.
This is why we love you.
I would rather somebody, lie about a sexual assault than a sexual assault actually have occurred.
Yeah.
But there is, there's always some motherfucker out there being like, oh, what about them females that are like, shut up.
That are ruining it for all of us. Like,
no, literally, a like false allegation does occur and the media like blows it up. And so then everyone's reading about it and they're like, oh my God, like this happens all the fucking time. And it's like, actually, no, it really doesn't. And I guarantee you that woman had some bad experience. Like, it's like, it really never fucking happens, but the media makes it seem like that is like the most common thing to happen. But it's also like, they're like, oh, like they just want to be like famous or something. It's like, this is not how anyone wants to be famous. Also, like the like percent chance that the perpetrator actually gets in trouble is so fucking low. Like, what person would put themselves through that whole fucking thing just to have like probably more of like a defamation case than anything? No woman out there wants to be talked about in this light. You know what I mean? Like,
this is not glamorous at all.
Yeah, it's terrible.
It's not chic. Like, that's not what we're saying here. No, 100%. I fully agree with that. And I think, and it's so unfortunate. This is the case that I always go back to is, Amber Heard. Her case followed everything that we have laid out as a framework for domestic abuse, for sexual violence, which is, a man who is significantly older, who has significantly more money and power. And, he was love bombing her. He was using a lot of substances. There was a lot of alcohol abuse. There was a documented history of violence. It had every single thing, right, that we look for, that we're like, oh, check, check, check. This is, an abusive relationship. But then when it comes down to it, people did not like her. And that was what made the decision, which is so sickening. This is just you do not need to be a likable person to deserve sympathy, to be believed. And there's a lot of organizations and people that do this. They talk about like, the imperfect victim and how you still deserve to have a platform. You still deserve to be believed. But within that construct, you still have to be the perfect imperfect victim, right? You still have to follow that kind of series of steps that makes you a believable person, that makes you a likable and relatable person. And so much of that stems from when we feel discomfort around something, when we feel like we cannot relate to something, we dismiss it, we reject it, and we feel this kind of, I think, disgust often when it comes to it. And we're unable to do that. We are unable to put that aside.
Okay, yeah, Amber Heard, she's not liked, yet then you're going to side with a man who has literally had like documented accounts of like domestic violence. Like, that's who you're gonna side with. Like,
Well, it's just, we hate women. Like that is
yeah.
just like men hate women and women hate women. It is something we need to unlearn.
That is all for part 1 with Sheerin Gryloo. Thank you so much to everybody that tuned in this week. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't worry, Sheerin will be back next week. This was a 2-parter. Guys, seriously, I tried so hard to cut this episode down and to just have it in one episode instead of 2 parts, but I just could not do it because everything that comes out of Shireen's mouth, like, first of all, she's so iconic, like, as you've heard from this episode, also just has so many personal anecdotes and experiences to speak on. And every single point she makes, I'm like, damn, Sheerin knows what she is talking about. This woman has been through it, and she is here to be an advocate for others. On next week's episode, she's going to go a lot more in depth about the Women's Advocacy Initiative, as well as talk more about why self-advocacy and shame cannot coexist. So stay tuned for that. We love you guys so much. We hope you have a great rest of your week. We'll catch you on the flip side, and cheers.